All right, everybody, welcome to the Unscripted podcast, one-on-one, and special guest tonight, Pastor Ken Murphy from Cypress Church here in, I guess, are you guys? You're not Hilliard, right? You're Columbus, or where is it?
It's interesting. We are a collection.
Right.
Our primary campus, the one that's kind of been around for almost 100 years, this year it's on Alton Darby Road, so it's about as far south as Hilliard as you can get. It's really between Broad Street and Fetter, right off of Alton Darby. But we
Yeah.
have the 4 different locations, so we're kind of all over.
Right, and it's still kind of Galloway, Columbus, Hilliard, somewhere in there. It's kind of in that pocket, right?
Yeah, we have one campus in Dublin, off of Avery Road, and then one in Grove City, right off of Columbus Street, kind of on the main drag there. London, Ohio, and then the Alton Darby, and then we're getting ready to launch our next 2 locations in the next probably 12 months as well. Be
Wow.
Marysville, and then actually an Espanol campus to reach the Hispanic community, which is all around us as well.
That's awesome. So, just to kind of go back through that again with me is Pastor Ken Murphy from Cypress Church, and I am truly honored, and I mean that not just in this pod, like I really mean that. And I was going to ask you, I don't know if it's theologically correct to say that I'm a fan of a church or a pastor, but I'm a fan, and I have been for a long time. I have quite a few friends that attend Cypress. We've visited several times. My son, today's his birthday. He's 20 today. To give you an idea, he actually attended preschool at Cypress for 2 years. So,
okay. Yeah,
so we've been around the church
absolutely
for a while. Turned 20 today. So that's hard to believe, but I am a fan. I'm a fan of what you guys do. And that's kind of a weird thing that I have. I'm fans of other churches and what they do, and always watching, and because I think we're in such a fascinating time and things are moving so fast. And so nothing but massive respect for your church, and again, truly honored that you would take time out of your schedule to come visit my little podcast. So thank
no,
you so
man,
much for doing that.
I appreciate the opportunity and love what you're doing and bringing more people and more conversations to the surface. Not just for the people of Hilliard, and even Central Ohio, but that's the beauty of technology.
Right.
Who knows how far this message and the messages and the stories that you are bringing to the surface can go to touch hearts, touch lives, encourage people. And I think it's awesome. So thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, and that's it. That's the only goal I have. I don't have any bigger goals than I feel like everyone has a story, as especially in your role, you see these all the time. Some of them are heartbreaking. Some of them are amazing, miraculous at times. And I think those need to be brought out, especially right where we are right now. We see so much negativity. And there's so many good stories out there, and everybody's got one. So I feel like I won't ever run out of material. It's just a matter of scheduling at this point. So,
I'm sure.
Yeah. So speaking of podcasts, do we want to start or end with yours? Because I got a million questions in between.
We'll end with mine. Let's start with you.
All right. So, so first question, what's it like leading now you said you have 4 campuses, 5? Soon to be
we
5?
have four physical locations. It's the Alton Darby campus. Cypress Church actually turned 100 years old this year, which is in church life and church organizations. Honestly, it's pretty rare to have a vibrant influence in the community.
Yeah.
100 years after you start. I personally, our family, we moved to Hilliard and moved into Cypress 20 years ago. So it's funny, your son did preschool probably about the same time. I kind of stepped into leadership over there.
Yep.
And then over the past number of years, we launched a Dublin campus off of Avery Road, the Grove City campus down on Columbus Street, and then our London campus. So there's 4 physical locations, a ton of people that engage in the ministry, which pretty much everybody has for the last 6 months online, and then in small groups and things of that nature. And then our next 2 locations, literally hot off the press, but we're going to Marysville, and then the Cypress Espanol, and then there's another campus we're working on for after that.
Wow. So, and let's, we talked about stories, and I'm going to pause my questions for a second. We talked about stories. What's yours? What brought you to Columbus? I know you've got a family. Tell us a little bit about your family and what brought you here to Columbus.
Yeah, my story, the short version is I grew up in northern Wisconsin, a small town called Eau Claire. It's about 2 hours straight east of Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. My wife grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. So two very different worlds,
Yeah,
small,
absolutely.
northern Wisconsin kid and big city girl. My dad was a pastor. So for me personally, it's, the most important thing for me growing up was sports
Yeah.
and having fun, hanging out with my friends. And I always kind of knew I felt a call or a purpose to help people or to serve people.
Hmm.
I think there's a purpose for everyone's life, and we're not truly fulfilled until we figure it out.
Right.
There's a number of different paths. I think, I was kind of thinking about what that might look like, and ended up playing baseball, college, at Oral Roberts University in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and had a lot of great memories. Was actually 3 days from signing with the Philadelphia Phillies.
Wow.
We had the contracts all drawn up, everything was good, and I tore my shoulder
Uh,
pitching against South Carolina.
hmm.
And it was interesting. It was the first time in my life, for me personally, I had to figure out, what did I really believe and why did I believe it?
Wow.
Because a lot of in my growing up years, you just believe stuff just because, I don't know, your parents do, you do.
Right.
And then the second thing that really happened at that same time is my dad died my
Hmm.
junior year of college.
I'm
And he
sorry.
had been ill my entire life. I was an only child. He had like 20 major operations, basically all the result of kidneys. His
Mm.
kidneys failed when he was a young man. And then, failed transplants, and then the steroids and everything, back in the 70s and 80s, technology wasn't anything what it is today.
Sure.
So really the two most important things in my life, baseball and my dad, were kind of taken away within a short time frame there.
Wow.
And that is also the school where I met my wife. She's incredible.
Hmm.
Serena, her degree is marketing communications. She's done communications ad agencies for hospitals, design build firms, all the rest. We met, and it was safe for us to be friends because I was just there to play baseball. She was simply there to finish up her, her degree and kind of go lead a company. And lo and behold, we fell in love and went to graduate school in Kentucky for 3 years and went to our first church in Wisconsin. And when I was in graduate school, I did an internship at Cypress Church.
Okay.
That would have been the summer of 95, I believe it was. And the church was about 500 people at that time. And it was, the only church I knew of that was even kind of like what I kind of thought like it could be one day.
Yeah.
And great experience. We went to Wisconsin and pastored our first church of about 150 people, and been that way for 150 years, and in an even smaller town called Rice Lake, Wisconsin. And good things happened. It was learned a lot. My education really started after I got out of school and
Yeah.
actually got, kind of in the trench there.
Yeah.
And then we ended up planting a church in that same small town, and saw just incredible things go from a dream with like 6 people to 500 people over the next 2 years.
Wow.
And that's when Cypress called and they said, "Hey, our pastor, received a new position in organizational leadership for the whole movement of the church. Would you consider being our senior leader?" And long story short, it was unanimous. We came, and although we've been here literally 20 years now, it's gone like that.
Yeah.
It's been a great place to live, raise. We have 3 boys. Our oldest, his birthday is actually tomorrow.
Okay.
Jackson, he's turns 24,
Wow.
and went away. He played basketball his freshman year at Indiana Wesleyan University in Marion, Indiana, and met an amazing girl who went to Davidson High School.
Okay.
Never met in high school, but they go 3 hours away to school and meet. And we love her. She's incredible. Olivia. And then our middle son, Mac, he graduated from Hilliard Bradley as well, and went through his own challenges with shoulder surgery, not unlike myself.
Yeah.
With baseball, he's in his final year of mechanical engineering at
Okay.
Cedarville University.
Yep. Great school.
And recently got married as well to a girl who graduated from Darby High School.
No way.
Bethany used to be Alacusan. We absolutely adore her.
Yeah.
And Mac is doing a co-op with Honda and absolutely loving it. So he's kind of well on that path. And then our youngest, Peyton, is in his junior year at Bradley. And yeah, he's doing great. He enjoys sports and friends and just kind of hanging out and doing that deal. And so it's been good. So yeah, we've been here 20 years. I feel like I've pastored about 8 different churches
Yeah, I
over those
imagine.
20 years, just
I
as
imagine.
families change, organizations change. We have the daycare, the preschool, the Christian school through 8th grade, now the 4 locations, soon to be 6, and working on the 7th. So it's an amazing story of challenge and growth, and more challenge and more blessing. And yeah, we absolutely love it.
Well, I gotta think the holidays are probably nice because it sounds like everybody's families are all close. So you're all as even though it didn't sound like it was planned that way, they met their wives or spouses or girlfriends, and they're all in Hilliard. So the holidays are probably
It's
nice.
either nice or they have to work twice as hard to make sure everyone's happy. So I don't know.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
working out though. It's working out good.
At least they can be in town. So when they come
Absolutely.
home, they're home for both of them, which is pretty cool.
Absolutely.
And I won't say that next uh, Thursday, we're headed to IWU for a recruiting visit with my daughter. So I won't say
Really?
that because she's actually headed to Mount Vernon tomorrow. She was, well, I don't want to go too much into her. I'll let her tell her own story, but she looked
What
at
for a
great.
sport? What sport?
She's a hurdler, so she's looked at great.
Okay.
And tomorrow we're going to Mount Vernon where my son plays baseball. And then
Awesome.
next week, it's funny. She at one point said, "I just want to stay in the Crossroads League." And I told our financial planner that, and he literally laughed out loud. And he said, "I've heard of the Big Ten, I've heard of SEC. I don't know if I've ever had someone tell me they want to stay in the Crossroads League." So,
Yeah.
so yeah, hey, whatever. I'm a Mount Vernon grad myself, and so it's
Oh,
pretty
awesome.
special to have my son. He actually just texted me before we got on. He pitched today, did well. So it's fun to go back to that campus, and I just wanted to go where the fit is, and I'm sure you're the same
Absolutely.
as a dad. I really don't care what colors we wear and all those things. I
Well, I
just
think
wanted to be fit.
as a parent too,
Yeah,
I mean, not just the education, you're really buying the environment and the
yeah,
culture and the values
yeah,
that you want your son or your daughter to be immersed in,
yeah.
and the quality and the character of the leaders around them.
Mm-hmm.
That's, my goodness, as a parent, we'll do whatever we need to do to get our kids into that best possible situation.
Yeah, and I think I've said this on other podcasts too. I mean, we don't have to look any further than March to see that my son lost his baseball season, his freshman season, due to COVID. It was shut down, and so he didn't ever get to play. So are you still somewhere where, whether it's an injury, like you said, or is it COVID, or Lord only knows what's next? Literally, Lord only knows
Yeah.
what's next.
Yeah.
Are you somewhere where you can still grow as a human being, become a man after God's heart, all those things, find your potential spouse, find the guys that'll stand next to you in your wedding? Those are the things that are priorities, and the sports is just like, oh, by the way, he also gets to play baseball. So, and for him, it became so apparent that that's exactly where God was leading us. He was actually going to go somewhere else. We bought t-shirts, the whole deal. And then out of the, kind of out of nowhere, this presented itself. And when we sat down and looked at it, it was like, it couldn't be more clear that this is where you're supposed to go. And it's been perfect. So
That's
anyway,
awesome.
so we may have one. I don't know. We'll see. Or she may end up at Indiana Wesleyan. So
Do you know a guy named Justin Clary?
I don't.
He's a good friend of mine. He attends Cypress. He and his wife, they actually own a local business, doing really, really well. And he was a catcher for Mount Vernon when they went to the NAI World Series.
Oh, that's awesome.
And yeah, great, just a great guy, great family, great program.
Great program. And that's where I think a lot of people dismiss or don't look at the NAIA as, there's some NAIA teams that could compete against D2, D3 easily. And
Easily.
Mount Vernon baseball is one that, I'm just proud. He's happy. And, I hope they do well, obviously on the field, but I'm so thrilled he's happy off the field. And so yeah. And today's
That's
birthday,
awesome.
So I could brag on my kids all night.
Absolutely.
As I'm sure you could as well. So, all right. So let me ask you a couple of, maybe, I don't know if they'll be tough questions. And if any of them are like, yeah, I don't, feel free. We're unscripted. So,
yep.
And again, I didn't send you any templates, so kind of
Perfect.
catching you maybe off guard. What's it been like leading a church in the midst of a pandemic?
It's a great, great question. I'll probably have a better answer for you a year from now.
Yeah.
But I think I would say part of the answer is it's been, and it sounds really weird to say it this way, but it's been so refreshing to be able to actually connect with people through technology. I told someone, I said, I felt like in our church, I mean, we'd run, 4,500 people or so on a weekend. And I said, please don't ever get enthralled with a number. The only number that's significant is how many people are in the community that we have to love, for Christ. That's the real number.
Yeah.
But just because, and I said, you could go down to the Horseshoe, a year ago, it can be packed with 100,000 people, but some might call it a spiritual experience, but it doesn't mean that anything significant or transforming was happening. It was an emotional experience.
Yes.
I said over those first several months that our church was not gathering on the weekend, I actually felt our church was more connected and more on point than we had been for quite some time, because we were so intentional to connect with everyone at a relational level, an emotional level, and a spiritual level. Hey, how can we pray for you? What do you need? How can we stand in the gap? And I just think that's, when you really boil it down, about loving one another, loving God, and loving our city, that is the church.
Yeah.
So it was actually, I think, for a lot of people, it was really been hard, but it's also been an opportunity to kind of hit the recalibrate button. I grew up in the 80s, video games, arcade,
Yep.
Xbox. If you're not going, hit the reset button. And I think a lot of people, COVID forced you to hit the reset button.
Yeah.
Because your routines were completely destroyed.
Yeah.
So you had to reevaluate, where am I satisfied? Where am I not? What has my hope actually been based upon? Am I satisfied with that? So the actual contemplation, the ability to reflect, I think we've all gone through, particularly those first few months where the house I don't care how big your house is, it got pretty small after a while.
Yes.
When you couldn't leave, and, little things became big things with relationships and all the rest. But in hindsight, it's actually been a gift. And, a pastor in a church, I mean, it's communication. It's caring, and just making sure there's every opportunity for people to remain connected.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've got there are 3 questions: leading a church in 3 different areas. So one was the pandemic. Next one is in the, and this may be a tough one, but in the current climate of and you've seen probably, I've had a few podcasts where I've tackled some tough conversations with, people of color that are friends, because I do believe that's the only way we're going to get this right, is if we stop yelling and we start having conversations and we start to understand. And I think when I say we, I mean, as a white man, I need to start to understand the pain, and I don't know that I ever will. But so what is it like leading a church in the current culture of racial tension that we're in?
Great question. I'm glad you asked it. Several months ago, I actually took a whole weekend and we talked about race relations. And it's interesting because even when talking about COVID, if there's 8,000 to 10,000 people who would call our church home, and again, no church has that many on a weekend. How many ever call that home? Average church attendance before COVID was 50%. So 40 to 50% of people show up on any given weekend. That's why Christmas Eve and Easter, they're often packed. It's not all these new people as much. Everybody just shows up on those 2 days.
Yeah.
So the responsibility list, is large. Even with COVID, I cannot describe for you the number of communications of the extremes on both ends of what people thought about related to COVID. And I can go and hit fast forward to the election. I can hit fast forward to pretty much any issue. There's a whole bunch of people in the middle, and then you have the extremes, different viewpoints. Race relations, the exact same thing.
Yes.
So what I try to do is to acknowledge everybody has an opinion and everyone is entitled to their opinion. I'm trying to take us on a journey of discovery to say, but what does the heart of God say about this? And let's open scripture. Let's talk to people. Whatever decision you make, you're going to make your own decision on your own.
Yeah.
No one forces any other person to make any decision, but you're invited to investigate for yourself.
Yeah.
So when it comes to race relations, I mean, we're serving, we have partnerships in the inner city, the lowest academic, education performing schools, city, Columbus City schools happens to be predominantly African-American. So we're trying to serve in tangible ways, coat drive, food drive. We have education e-learning centers at a number of our campuses, even right now, to help kids, with
Yeah.
e-learning and stuff like that. But then with the race relations, it was just getting to a point, I was like, I got to do something different. So I actually took a whole weekend, sat down with two friends of mine. One I've known for a number of years. The other one is becoming a very dear friend quickly, who attends Cypress. One actually happens to be a police officer. The other one is an engineer at Honda. And we just had a conversation.
Yeah.
And Jack and John and myself, it's online, cypresschurch.tv. And we talked about racial profiling. We talked about, as a white person, there are certain things in life I can say, well, I think I understand what you feel. But there are certain things it would be insulting for me to say that because I have no idea.
Exactly. Yep.
And,
Yep.
it can be like, oh, tell your wife when she's pregnant, oh, I know what it must feel like, labor pains. No, you have no idea.
No clue. Right.
You are the husband. You're the man.
Right.
You don't know this.
Yep.
So you can never, I think it almost like takes away from the other person's, the authenticity of their experience to say, I know how you feel,
Yeah.
but yet we have to hear
Mhm.
one another and just have the conversation. And for me, I do happen to be a believer. I don't know that everyone who listens to your podcast is a believer or not,
Mhm.
but what I believe to be true is everybody has some anchor point or some reference point that becomes their moral ground zero.
Hmm.
And everything in their life, they'll evaluate whether it's right or wrong based upon their kind of grid or their code.
Mhm.
So for me, when I read scripture, because I follow Christ, and it says, there's no Greek, there's no Jew, everyone's equal.
Mhm.
Go back even in historical context. It's not that complicated. For God so loved, next word, the world.
Yeah.
It wasn't God so loved people like me,
Right.
or people who vote like me,
Right.
or people who look like me,
Mhm.
or think like me. And I always said with Christianity, the easiest thing in the world is to love God. Why?
Mhm.
He's perfect. He never lets you down.
Yeah.
The thing that complicates Christianity is other people.
Absolutely.
And the thing that really complicates it is when I'm called to love other people the way God loved me, which was I didn't deserve it. I'm a sinner. I'm screwed up. And he wants me to love other people that don't even know him yet with the exact same kind of generous, all compassionate, sacrificing love that he loved me. So that's the call. That's the challenge.
Yeah. Well, and that's really powerful. And there was a few things I took out of that. And one of the conversations I had earlier, they're all running together. I think it was last week. Was a friend of mine from high school, and we talked about that. I told him I think, and I can't remember the quote. I need to look it up, but it was a quote that talked about how, we, and when I say we, I mean me as myself as a white male,
Yeah.
especially growing up in the 80s, we liked Michael Jackson and Michael Jordan, and we loved a culture. We wanted to wear the shoes and the gear, and we wanted to, we listened to music. And as I told him, just because I might listen to a Public Enemy album, is a band or a group that we
Yep.
both like, just because I listen to a Public Enemy album, it doesn't give me the right to say that I understand, like you said. And I think that's where we're there's a little bit of disconnect, I think, for us, is just because I like Kanye West or you name it, any current cultural icon that is a person of color, that doesn't mean I understand. A lot of times, even the lyrics in their song, the pain, the frustration, like you said. And the other quote that I always come back to is it's a lyric, actually. It says, "We all talk a different language, talking in defense." And I think that's where we are. We're all talking a different language right now because we're all defending something, which maybe leads me to my third question for you.
Well, I want to say one more thing on the whole
Go
race
ahead.
thing.
Yep.
And this is for me personally. And again, I grew up playing sports all through high school and into college. And I really believe my sports background, my mentality is don't care where you came from. I just
Right.
want to play with the best kid.
Yep.
And when it comes time to take a shot, I just want whoever's the best shooter to have the ball in their hand.
Yes.
So I truly didn't see color or ethnicity in the culture that I personally grew up in. But here's the part that I felt like, for me personally, like God was leaning into me recently. I really don't think that I have in any shape or form shown a prejudiceness towards people of different ethnicity. But the question I had to wrestle for myself, but have I done enough to be for people?
Mm.
It's
Mhm.
one thing to say, well, I'm not against you, or I'm not trying to make your life hard, or I'm not against you. And even to say, oh, I want to understand, is that enough? I think the answer is clearly no.
Yeah.
So then I have to be for people,
Yes.
not just people of color, but it could be economic difference, ethnicity difference, educational difference. Am I doing enough? Am I doing my part to create an equal playing field?
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to love everybody, but again, if you have the lowest performing academic school, don't just talk about it, go do something.
Be about it. Yep.
Be a difference maker, make a difference. So
Yeah. And the other thing that, much like you said, that I told him, we grew up in the same town. It was a 60-40 split typically, and we're 50-50. We couldn't remember the exact split, but so I grew, and I said, Darren, we grew up in the same place. Like, I don't understand the world we live in today. Much like you said, I don't look at the world that way. But he said this, and it was very painful and powerful for me, was he said, we grew up in the same place, but not in the same way.
yeah.
And it was like, wow, because again, just because of our address or zip code, that didn't make it that I could experience, or as we said a few times now, understand the world that he has lived in. So as I that's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I know I'm catching you off guard.
No, I love it.
No softball. So
No, I love it.
we're going.
Well, these are the real issues where people live, man. So what
Yeah.
everyone's thinking about, we're confronted with it every day.
Yeah. And as a leader of a church that is, again, as I said, I very much respect. I appreciate you taking and tackling these, as they come. So, and we'll get all the links at the end, because I want to make sure that we hit up,
Yeah.
everything, or anybody hearing this can go and find where you have already.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That'd be great.
Services. All right. Last one. And I think you kind of touched on it a little bit, leading a church in a political climate that we're in. How has that been?
Here's the great challenge, I think, and it could be politics, race, economics, anything. I believe there is a deficit, generally speaking, in culture and society, and it's this. I'm afraid, large in part, we've lost the ability to think and reason for ourselves.
Mm.
And a lot of times what happens is we look to other leaders in society or culture and say, well, what do they say and what do they think? And if enough people say it, then they begin, well, that surely must be true.
Mm-hmm.
And what I try to do at Cypress is I don't tell anybody how to vote. I won't tell anybody, what they should think,
Mm-hmm.
other than to say, again, what would the heart of God have to say about this issue? What is the mind of God? And that's go back to parenting. When my 3 kids were 5, I didn't let them make the decision, what do they want for breakfast?
Mm-hmm.
Be Snicker bars and ice cream. I mean,
Right.
you just, as a parent,
Mm-hmm.
good parenting is you make those decisions, but then what do? You begin to hand off the responsibility.
Yeah.
And teach them every decision has a consequence.
Right.
You are free to make whatever decision you want.
Yeah.
But every decision, what you're not free is to live void of the consequence. Oftentimes it's blessing or something good, or it's going to be something hard, something painful.
Yeah.
And oftentimes our choices don't automatically reveal that outcome. Sometimes it's, again, saving for retirement.
Right.
You start in your 20s and retirement seems like a million years away.
Yeah.
Until you get to be my age and you're like, hello,
It's right
I can
there.
see around that next corner.
Mm-hmm.
So I always tell everybody in their 20s, man, start sooner, start now, start somewhere.
Yeah.
So going back to politics, I try to teach what is scripture, then do your own diligence.
Yeah.
And vote your conviction, be a part of it, be a difference maker, but realize your hope is never going to be found in an earthly government or politicians. I go back to scripture in Acts. When was the church most robust? Really right out of the gate, when they were actually killing people for their belief that Jesus was the Christ.
Yeah.
And the thing that killed the church was probably a guy named, or not killed it, but really put a damper on its growth, was a guy named Constantine. I think it was about the year 313, when he made Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire.
Yes.
At that point, what happened? Oh, everybody's a Christian. Yeah, of course I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
I love it when I meet people around town who don't know what I do.
Yeah.
They just know me as a coach or a dad or, whatever, washed up has-been golfer. And eventually the conversation always comes out, oh, what do you do for a living? And sometimes I'll actually say, I actually work with people and do like a lot of life coaching or whatever. And then eventually, oh, you're a pastor.
Yeah.
People who don't know me, I promise you 9 times out of 10, oh, I was confirmed in 5th grade. Or they always go back to, oh, I was brought up, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. So how have the past, 30 years of your life gone?
Yeah.
So to me, it's about teaching people to think biblically and to process just like you would your kid, because when kids go off to college, mom and dad are not there to make their decisions for them.
Right. Amen.
So you can't just be yes, no, yes, no. You have to be, hey, the answer I think is yes, but here's the reasons why. What do you think?
Yeah.
And again, at the end of the day, there has to be so much grace, because there's a lot of things that don't matter. And the whole political deal, of course I have my own personal opinion and my personal conviction and belief. But every 4 years, we're going to do the same thing over again.
Yeah.
And whoever's in office, that kind of where the pendulum shifts. But I'm just thankful that the hope that I carry is not going to be determined upon the outcome of man's collective opinion.
Yes.
That is frightening, actually. When you think everybody's collective opinion is going to determine what happens. But everybody probably thinks that. So anyway, that's, when it comes to politics, I try to teach, we're here to love God. We're here to love people. We're all going to have different opinions. Some people like country music. Some people don't.
Yeah.
Some people like, what I'm saying? I mean, that's an opinion. So let's be a part, let's be involved. But when it comes down to what matters, loving God, loving one another, loving our city, even in the midst of some of our differences, to lead people closer to Christ, that's what matters most.
Yeah. Great answer. And again, I hope anybody that's hearing this, I've told a few people, like, I'm not going to worry about where this lands, because I think God will direct these podcasts to land where they need to. And I hope they land softly in those places and they're accepted, for whatever that means for each person that hears it. But there's a few things you said that I thought, one of them is, I've always kind of wrestled with that personally, when it comes to faith and how we've adopted certain icons as ours, like Chick-fil-A. You know what I mean? And we all know that they have great, and this is nothing about Chick-fil-A. It's the fact that much like you said, Constantine, we've done that with Chick-fil-A and Hobby Lobby and some of these things, and we've made them these icons that I don't even think it's fair to Chick-fil-A. Just because they're not open on Sunday for their own principles, that doesn't make it ours. That it's not, you know what I mean? I don't know. That's a whole nother podcast.
Well,
I think, but
I'll give you for example, our church, we have not met for public worship gatherings since, I think it was like March 7th.
Yeah.
So 6 or 7 months we haven't met. Now, the first time we are planning to reopen the doors is coming up here in October 17th and 18th. The data tells me that 30%, maybe 20 to 30% will actually regather in person. Everyone else is going to be online.
Yeah.
But there are some people who thought I should never have closed. There's some people who thought I shouldn't open because it's a health risk. I mean,
right.
Big Ten football, local schools, e-learning, in person, everybody has an opinion.
Exactly.
And eventually you have to look at the data, which is the evidence. I'm a big believer in leadership. It should always be we, never me.
Right.
So what is the collective wisdom of your executive team or your core leaders? Always err to the side of caution and love, and then make your decision, keep your palms open and move forward, and let's trust God and see what happens.
Yeah.
So there's room for a lot of opinions in the church. There's room for a lot of different people. in the church, because we're all guiding, we're all coming back to, we say at Cypress, we love everybody, but we stand on an unwavering truth that sometimes makes us uncomfortable.
Truth.
So the
Truth.
love is for everybody, no matter where you are, no matter what you've done, no matter what you believe.
Right.
But Christ is uncompromising. His love was unrelenting. And that's when it says, in John, he came full of grace and truth.
Mm-hmm.
And you really got to have both of those to make the thing work.
Yeah.
All truth, no love, that's harsh. That's horrible.
Right.
All grace, no truth, that's not loving either. I mean, if you love someone, you're going to eventually share the truth with them.
Right.
It's always their choice. But yeah, so that's kind of how we do politics, COVID, everything.
Awesome. And I there was one other thing that you said that was funny to me, because again, it's today's his birthday. So I guess I'm stuck, with him. They're always on my mind. You know how it is. Your kids are always on your mind. But I remember he was 2. He turned 2, and my sister has 4 kids, and she's down in Houston. So I called her, and because he was hitting that terrible 2s, and he was only in it for maybe a minute. It was quick.
Yeah.
But I remember I called her and I said, how in the world did you do this with 4? Like, I don't know what to do right now. Because again, we're first-time parents. And she said, there's decisions and there's consequences.
Yep.
And that has been probably the biggest anchor in my parenting, has been, whether it's right or wrong, I don't know, but it seems to have worked, was, as you said, I had to first make decisions and then consequences. And then for them, I loved what you said, hand it off a little by little, to where now he's at college, and now it's, hey buddy, you're making those decisions, and you're going to have to live with the consequences. Even choosing his college there's decisions and then there's consequences. We can go to this school or we can go to this one. That was fantastic. I hope people heard that. It was great.
And that teaching is always under the umbrella of love.
Yes.
When I was growing up, I made a lot of bad decisions, and I suffered the consequences.
Right.
There's times my parents would draw a line in the sand. I tested it. I stepped over it. My dad never failed to remind me, yep, that's the line. I actually meant it when I said it. Now here's the consequence, which was never pleasant.
Yeah.
But I never questioned their love for me. Mm-hmm. And it was able to separate the behavior from the person.
Yeah.
And I just think that's so important, because even in sports, you have shoulder surgery. Once you lose your ability to perform, you question often your self-worth, your self-identity. Because maybe it was too wrapped up in my performance.
Yeah.
And man, I see we do it even as 40-year-olds, 30-year-olds, and 50-year-olds. Our worth is who you are. You've been created by God, loved by God. He's got a purpose for your life. And there's nothing you can do that will ever take that away. Love is relentless.
Yeah. Oh, this has been so good. So good. Just even if it's just me and you talking and nobody else hears it, thank you so much.
I've really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it.
You got a couple more minutes?
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. So I'm going to ask you one more, maybe tough question. And it's just come to mind as we've been talking, which is why it's unscripted. What scares you the most right now?
Personally?
Yes.
That is a really good question. I think part of what friends of mine ask me, they say, how can I pray for you? And my answer is always the same. And it's not a flippant answer. It's a thought through answer. But then every time I think about it, it just drives my answer even more. I pray for wisdom every single day.
Yeah.
Because just being a man, who's trying to be a great husband to my wife, and I should know how many years we've been married. It's coming up on almost 30, I think it is now, 28, 29 years. And being a dad, and now having the opportunity to have 2 incredible daughters-in-law join the family, being a pastor, of a congregation, school, daycare, preschool, the whole deal. I feel a burden to carry this vision of what I believe God's put on my heart of what could be, to reach as many people as possible that they can know and experience God. Really know him. Yeah. Not just hear about him, but know him, find friends and freedom, and discover the reason God made them, and they can live it out and make a difference in their life and really fulfill their God-given purpose. And I just know every decision carries a lot of weight. And that's as far as what scares me, I don't know if it's scare as much as it is the burden of making sure we don't mess this thing up.
Right.
My nature is never to coast. So I want to enjoy, the good things and the blessings, but I'm always looking, what's the next mountain to climb? What's the next thing? This is good. Okay. How could it be better?
Yeah.
What's next?
Yeah.
And I don't want to live my life as a dad, a husband, a pastor, a leader, or a friend, and then look back over my shoulder and say, man, I wish I would have just blinked just a little bit more.
Yeah.
And it's easy to give that advice to other people. Again, your son, birthday, freshman year, lost, baseball. Dude, those 3 years will go by in a flash.
Yes.
Give it everything you have, because there will come a day you'll be old and you won't be able to throw, run, hit like you can.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. He's a pitcher. Dude, savor every moment.
Yep.
Because you want to live life with no regrets. So, I mean, for me, and in my position, it's not just me, but it's the influence of all of us to help them be a part of something special they never could by themselves.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I give you credit because that was out of left field. that one kind of came literally. You're off the hot seat. Now it's your turn. Tell me all about your new podcast, because that was our original connect point. I want to hear all about your podcast. You're off the hot seat for a while.
Yeah, no, that's good. Honestly, the podcast is the same thing you're trying to do. I'm continuing the conversation. I've had people for years who have said, man, I wish you would just talk a little bit more about parenting and what were the challenges you went through, finances, just personal finances, just how do we live with margin? I mean, one of the things COVID has taught, if you don't have margin, your stress levels through the roof.
Yep.
And that's organizations, business, personal, just a lot of things that I'm passionate. I really I want to add value to people. That's kind of what we're trying to do at Cypress through biblical principles, relationship with God, one another, live out your purpose. And eventually, I guess I just got to the point where I was like, okay, I think it's time. And then I, started talking to a few friends and said, would you be willing for me to interview you? So mine's going to be interview format for the most part.
Nice.
Maybe they're a guest on the weekend. The first one is actually my nephew, Davey Blackburn. His story was like a national story. Sadly, his pregnant wife was murdered from Indianapolis. He was a pastor 3.5 years ago.
I remember that.
He's actually my nephew. And, I've had him over to Cypress to share a little bit of his story and his journey and healing and he has actually started a ministry called Nothing is Wasted. And it's the journey from pain to purpose, because we all have pain. Every single one of us do. And we got to figure out, how do I heal?
Yeah.
And you can't always move past stuff, but you can move forward from it.
Yeah.
Otherwise we become prisoners to it. I got, just friends in finance. I'm actually bringing my counselor on the podcast later this month. I think everybody needs a coach.
Yeah.
If Tiger Woods still used a swing coach in the heyday, I don't know why anybody would say, I don't need a coach.
100%.
So we all need those outside perspectives to kind of help us stay sharp in the areas of life that matter most. So yeah, it's called More with Murphy. My wife, Serena, she's going to join me on a lot of them. Same exact format. It's just unscripted. We just sit down. I'll have a couple questions in mind, and then we'll see where the conversation leads us.
Yeah.
And my honest to goodness hope and prayer is that anyone who might listen, which probably my mom will, if no one else does, my mom, right. She'll be good for it.
100%. Yeah.
But if anyone listens, that they would say, you know what? I'm glad I listened to that. That either encouraged me or it made me say, oh, me too. I'm not the only one who struggled with that.
Yep. Yep.
And maybe it could add value and provide a pathway for their life to get better.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I mean, why talk?
Right.
I mean, so it has to encourage people, help them realize they're not the only ones who struggle.
Yeah.
In different areas. And then most importantly though, let's make this not just an emotional moment, but a transforming moment. And again, I believe that's not even just knowing the truth, it's actually doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, so then I got to apply these principles to my life on a consistent basis where life actually begins to change.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly what I've told a lot of people is, I didn't feel like the world needed another podcast when I started this. I was like, the world doesn't need another one. There's a bazillion of them already, and everybody's doing it. It's almost like blogging, 10, 15 years ago, everybody had one. And I had one, and I just kind of like, it just got, and I walked away from it, and then this thing started. And so, but that was, like you said, if nobody else hears it, our time tonight has been so blessing and rich for me. That was fantastic. Like, it's been amazing for me to just sit down with people, hear their stories, and just, it's been food for my soul in a world right now that's so negative. Because if nothing else, I haven't been on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram in the past 45 minutes, and that's probably a good thing.
No, I hear you, man.
I'd much rather be fed with something like this.
I absolutely agree with you.
So I'm going to, two things. One, open invitation from now on. You are welcome here whenever you want to come on. I guarantee anybody that hears this is the same. I just love the conversation, and I always like learning from those that I respect so much. And so thank you for that. Second is links. Give me all the links, because I'll put them all on the blog post, but also for anybody listening or driving in their car, what are all your links?
Yeah, I first of all, Aaron, thank you so much for reaching out to me. Again, it's similar respect. I've heard your name. I don't stalk you, but I follow you, and I don't even know how that stuff works on Twitter, but I see like certain names start popping up, and they pop up more often, it's artificial intelligence, whatever.
Right.
But I really, I appreciate what you're doing in the community to bring important conversations to the surface.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just awareness, learn. And I think one of the most important, I think social media, and anyway, that's a whole nother topic for the next time.
Podcast. That's right.
But, I'll get you the links. I'll have, cypresschurch.tv is our church website. And then where my personal stuff's going to be housed, a lot of it outside of the teachings, a lot of teachings are at cypresschurch.tv, but is morewithmurphy.com.
Okay.
So it's morewithmurphy.com. The podcast is, you can find it on Spotify. I think there's a YouTube channel that's being made for it. And then iTunes or wherever you get your podcast download, that's where it'll be. More with Murphy.
I'm really looking forward to it. And just to clarify too, you said that there was a series that you guys did on race. Is that would be available at the church website, right?
Yep. That's in the teaching archives. And actually I'll have our communications person pull it out and kind of put it in a special link, so it'd be easy to find there. I did a series a couple of years ago called God, Politics, and the Church, which people might find interesting as well.
Yeah.
And, just kind of dove into what does it mean to be a person of conviction and compassion.
Yeah.
And love and some other stuff. But anyway, yeah, it's great.
The last thing I'll say, because I thought of this and I forgot it while we were talking, I was in Wilmington, North Carolina at the beach for vacation. We went and found this, I can't remember, it was Coastal or Coast Church or, something like that. It was a guest speaker that day. And he said something that just was so powerful to me. And that he said, we got to stop acting like God needs us to defend him. Like, he could pretty much handle it.
Absolutely.
And I thought of that while you were talking. It was just one more nugget that I wanted to get in there for somebody, because I think I even tweeted it like last week. And I don't know how that was received by people, but we do. And his whole sermon was a fantastic sermon. It was a lot about that, how we have acted in a certain way, like God needs us to defend him.
Absolutely.
When he's doing just fine. And if anything, we're probably getting in the way, and he's doing just fine. He doesn't need our help.
I find it's far more persuasive to love people closer and do their own, investigation of who Christ is and if he's really real, and if you could have a plan or a purpose for their life, than to try to argue them into it.
Yeah.
And you just, man, it truly is about loving people with grace and doing it in the spirit of truth.
Yeah. What did Yancey say? No one ever became a Christian because they lost the argument. Isn't that? I think that's what Philip Yancey said.
Well, I think honestly, even in like relationships, with, my one wife, I mean, do I want to be right, or do I want to be in a right relationship? And I think a lot of times we argue in even relationships we're close, we argue to be right. And maybe you are right, but if you damage the relationship, you actually lost at the end of the day.
Wow.
So it takes a lot of humility to kind of step aside, even if you still think you're right.
Yeah.
And that's just in the closest relationships of people we care about. So then add into whether it's a coworker, a neighbor, a friend, just some random dude you meet, around town.
Yeah.
Why you think the best thing to do would be to argue with someone over their beliefs, and particularly to do it over Twitter or Facebook or
Nobody ever
Instagram?
wins.
I just don't understand it
Yeah.
personally. That doesn't tend to help people.
Yeah, nobody ever wins a Twitter war. That's my
Oh, it's
my
ridiculous.
I tell our
Yeah.
our team all the time, guys, nobody ever wins a Twitter war. Just don't engage. Like you said,
Yeah.
I can make a good decision. I can make a bad decision. It depends on which side you're looking at it. But I tell you, as a former
Absolutely.
pitcher, you just came in with that last little segment right there about relationship, and you just closed the door. You just nailed it. You got the win. You got the save all in one. that was
I better
awesome.
go ice. I better go ice down then.
Yeah, go run the polls. Get your ice.
Absolutely.
No, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. I know I've said it quite a bit, but I mean it. What a rich time.
I've really
for
enjoyed
me
my
tonight.
time. I've really enjoyed my time, Aaron. Really appreciate it. And again, God's blessing to you as you continue to bring conversation to the service and to the surface. And I pray it helps a whole bunch of people. Thanks for having me.
And the same for you with your church, with all the topics we've discussed. There's a lot right now that as a leader that you said wisdom, so that's what I'll be praying for you most, but also praying for your church as we all navigate this time in our history that is unprecedented. So God bless
it very much.
Cypress. God bless you, your family. And I'm sure we'll run into each other somewhere in Hilliard, but until then, open invitation. You're always welcome back.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much.
Right. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.